When you're standing in the aisle of a big box store, or scrolling through endless listings online, the first thing that makes you pause is the fear of ending up with a system that sounds great on paper but falls flat in your living room. A 7.1 home theater package isn't just another purchase, it reshapes how you experience movies, sports, and games for years to come. That's why I'm taking a step back, looking past the glossy marketing, and trying to figure out whether the Klipsch 7.1 Ebony system actually earns its reputation for immersive sound without turning your space into a costly experiment. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's start with the kind of room this system was built for. Klipsch's design philosophy leans heavily on horn-loaded tweeters and large-format woofers, which means they thrive when you have a decent amount of space. Think a medium-sized family room or a dedicated home theater den. If your couch is tucked into a 10-foot by 12-foot rectangle, you'll notice the speakers filling the room rather than sounding like a single point source. In a cramped apartment, however, the same horns can become overly forward, making dialogue feel like it's coming from a speaker directly on your cheek rather than a balanced soundstage. The system arrives as a complete package: 2 floor-standing front speakers, 2 compact side surrounds, a dedicated center channel, a pair of satellite rear surrounds, and a subwoofer that promises deep, controlled bass. The first practical strength I observed is the coherence that comes from having all the drivers engineered under a single brand language. The LTS titanium diaphragm tweeters give the highs a crispness that stays airy even at higher volumes, while the Cerametallic woofers manage to stay tight during action sequences without the usual boom 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 muddiness you sometimes hear with cheaper subs. A real-world test case is a Friday night movie marathon of sci-fi blockbusters. When the opening titles rolled, the front speakers delivered a clean, detailed sweep that made the orchestral swells feel like they were happening in the room. The center channel held dialogue clear enough that I didn't have to squint at subtitles, even when the characters shouted over explosions. The side and rear surrounds created a genuine sense of width. You could pinpoint a spaceship flying from left rear to right front without the sound feeling disjointed. That sense of placement is a direct benefit of the dual input terminals that let you bi-wire or bi-amp the speakers, separating high-frequency and low-frequency signals for a cleaner signal path. If you have a decent AV receiver that supports bi-amping, you'll squeeze out a noticeable improvement. Otherwise, the standard single-amp connection still sounds solid. Now, where the system shows its hidden trade-offs is in the setup complexity. The horn-loaded tweeters are fantastic for projection, but they also demand careful placement. If you position the front speakers too close to a wall, you'll get an exaggerated bass response that can mask the subtle detail the tweeters are trying to deliver. The sweet spot ends up being about a foot or two away from the sidewalls and at ear height when seated. For someone who isn't comfortable tweaking speaker placement or who doesn't have the freedom to move furniture, that can become a frustrating trial-and-error session. Another practical concern is power handling. The subwoofer, while delivering impressive low-end, can be a bit hungry. In a typical 5.1 to 7.1 upgrade scenario, you might be tempted to run it at full blast for every movie, but doing so can cause the rest of the speakers to feel recessed. The key is to calibrate the sub-level through your receiver's auto setup or a manual SPL meter if you have one. I found the sub performed best when set about 6 dB below the main speakers for dialogue-heavy content, and a little louder for action-heavy scenes. This balancing act is a nuance that casual buyers often overlook. Who should consider the Klipsch 7.1 Ebony system? If you already own a capable AV receiver with bi-amp support, have a dedicated space where you can place speakers a few feet from walls, and value a theatrical soundstage that can keep you glued to the screen, this package offers a cohesive, high-impact experience without needing to cherry-pick individual components. It also appeals to gamers who want directional cues that are accurate enough to give a competitive edge, especially in fast-paced shooters where hearing a footstep from behind can make a difference. On the other side, if you're living in a small apartment, have limited wall space, or are planning to use the system with a basic receiver that only supports stereo or 5.1, you might be better off with a more compact 5.1 set that's easier to position and less demanding on power. The same applies if you're on a strict budget. The Ebony system's price reflects the premium materials and the full 7.1 layout, so a more modestly sized set could free up cash for a better receiver or a high-quality projector. One final practical point that often gets missed in spec sheets is durability. The Ebony finish is not just about aesthetics, it's a veneer that hides a sturdy MDF core. In